Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, I've been on 7 cruises now since the pandemic uh, started easing. The restrictions started easing. We're able to get the cruise ships up and running again since July. I've been on 7 cruises and I have 3 more scheduled within 10 days. So I thought I'm going to tell you my top 10 things that I've learned about sailing during the pandemic and what you still, to this day, need to keep an eye on. So my top 10 things you need to know if you're going to be cruising anytime soon. Number 1 is protocols. Every cruise line is different. Every cruise line has their own protocols. Some don't have to wear a mask. Some you have to wear a mask. Some you only have to wear a mask on certain locations. Some have vaccine-only locations that you can go on the ship and you can't go if you're unvaccinated. Some cruise lines are completely different with their testing policies than other cruise lines. Some are charging you money, some are not charging you money. You have to research each individual cruise line's protocols if you're sailing and from where you're sailing. If you're heading to Europe, the testing protocols and the law and the restrictions are different than they are in North America. So please check your individual cruise line to find out. It's all in their Sail Safe or the Healthy Sail, wherever they have. When you get on their homepage, when you're looking at the cruises, see the protocols up top. You click on that and just go down the list and find out exactly your rules for the cruise you're looking at. Number 2, pre-cruise testing is all over the place also. Some cruise lines have to make you do it twice. Some are making you only have to do it once. Some people are allowed to do home tests. Some are not allowed to do home tests. Some people need a certain type of vaccine. Some cruise lines, you don't need a certain type of vaccine, etc. So find out the pre-cruise testing policies for the cruise you're looking at and keep an eye on them because they are changing and will be changing in the next 30 to 60 days again and again and again as the CDC gets out of the controlling of the cruise ship industry and the cruise ship's more of a voluntary system. You're going to see that possibly the testing disappears. Countries are looking at getting rid of testing for going flying and getting back into the country. So keep an eye on it, but check your cruise line for pre-cruise testing and what's acceptable. Number 3, of course, is the post-cruise test. Some cruise lines are now charging you. Some cruise lines are offering it for free if you need a test to fly. And some of them are saying you need to show proof that you actually have to travel. If you're spending 5 or 6 days in Florida, then you don't need it to travel because it's only good for 3 days. They're not going to give you the test. Not only that, that's changing all over the place as well. But one thing I will say, you all probably saw when I did my first trip on the Edge, I got stuck in Florida because they lost my COVID test. They ended up putting me in a hotel for 3 nights. They ended up paying my flights back home, paying my food, etc. They covered everything. That wasn't the issue at all. But the testing, they lost my test. It was a mess back then. The testing since then, I've been on multiple ships since then, and the testing has gotten much, much smoother, much more reliable. I've never had to wait more than an hour for my PCR test getting off the ship, and it was in my email, or I had a printed copy. If it was an antigen test, I often had a printed copy in my hand in less than 30 minutes. So yeah, much, much better than it used to be. Number 4, entertainment. Entertainment is always good on, well, not always, but most of the time it's pretty good on cruise ships. I love the Broadway shows. I love the guest entertainers they bring on. I like seeing a comedian every once in a while. However, because the ships are not sailing at 100% capacity in a lot of cases, the cruise line may cut back on the amount of shows that are available. For instance, Royal Caribbean would normally have 2 Broadway shows each night, an early show and a late show. Same as Princess would have an early show and a late show. But because there was 1,000 people on one cruise, 700 on another, they had 1 performance each night. So you had to schedule your dining around when they were going to have their performances. So picking an early dining or a late dining really kind of messed you up. If it turned out that the show you wanted to see was right during your early dining time, or some people were complaining because the show wasn't starting until like 9:45 at night. Well, a lot of people are ready for bed at 9:45 at night after a busy day if you're an older person or just somebody relaxing on your cruise. So keep that in mind. The entertainment on board, especially the Broadway shows, there may be cutbacks. The shows will still be there, but they may not be showing as often as you think they should be showing. Number 6, your activities on a cruise ship. Often a lot of people like to attend trivia in the afternoon, and they like to go to bingo, and they like to do little things like that during the day before all the big entertainment starts, especially on the sea days and things like that. Well, on some of my cruises, I've been into trivia, and there have been 3 people. 3 people from the entire cruise ship in for a trivia session. So yeah, some of the activities, if the cruises aren't sailing at capacity, some of those activities, it's going to be greatly, greatly cut back. And some of those activities, because of social distancing and the COVID protocols, like line dancing and things like that, may also be cut back dramatically. So be prepared for that. They're doing their best to do the most that they can, but some things will be cut back. Some cruise lines, and depending on the port you're going to or the cruise port you're going to, will make you buy cruise ship shore excursions. You won't be able to go off on your own and hire somebody and go off. It's going to be a rule, not because of the cruise ship normally, but because of the cruise port. They will be ordering you to only do cruises so they can keep you in what they call the bubble, and you're not wandering around in their country and all over the place and possibly spread COVID. I know, right? The countries we're going to have more COVID in them than we have on the cruise ship. So, but it is a thing in some ports that you can only get off the ship using a cruise ship excursion. And those are usually a little more expensive than doing them on your own. So yeah, something you should be aware of. Number 8, speaking of cruise ports, a lot of ports have their own rules. Like we had the shore excursion rule. They also have, hey, you have to wear a mask in port, even outdoors in some cruise ports. A lot of people are very surprised and caught off guard by that. You get off a cruise ship that maybe you're wearing a mask, but you expect once I get outdoors, off it goes. No, some cruise ports demand that you still wear a mask, so find out that or be prepared for that. Don't leave your mask at home or you won't be able to get off the ship. Number 9. Definitely a real important thing. We all have insurance, you're covering yourself and everything. But COVID isn't not necessarily covered under your insurance. But the cruise lines have been covering any COVID-related expenses. However, each one has their own different, and a lot of people are very confused. What, am I going to be put in a hotel? Am I going to be stuck there for weeks on end? Am I locked in a room on the ship? What happened? Well, here's generally what happens is that depending on how far into the cruise or where you're at, you'll be isolated. If you're asymptomatic, you'll just be isolated in a room that is set aside on the cruise ships. And then they're going to try and get you home instead of putting you in a hotel. For instance, Royal Caribbean will put you in a hotel until they get you a flight, and then they will fly you home on a private jet. So if you're asymptomatic, if you need hospitalization, that's a different story, right? You go into the hospital and stuff kicks in. But vast majority of people who ever test positive for COVID have very mild symptoms or no symptoms at all. And so those people will just be flown home in private jets or put up for a couple nights in a hotel until they're cleared and then they fly home. It's not as big a worry as it was when all this first started and first broke out. I don't know. I've seen people isolated and stuck, but they've been flown home and got there and they get their money back as well. Sometimes it's only partial money back. So if you're on a 20-day cruise and you've gone 10 days, well, you'll get half your money back. Some cruise lines are refunding the whole thing. So check all those policies out. And number 10, please keep an eye on all the changing protocols right up until you go to the cruise. We've had cruise policies change while I'm on the plane to the cruise. So yes, things can change. Things are always moving around, especially now that we're coming close to January 22 there. On the 15th, when the CDC makes things voluntary with the cruise lines, there's probably going to be a lot of changes, especially as we get closer and closer to that. And there could be changes even before that, because the CDC and the governments are all looking at different policies right now, and there could be some huge announcements coming up within the next 30 days. So yeah, follow the protocols, make sure everything is set right up until you're actually stepping foot on the cruise ship. Well, that's it. That's 10 things I've noticed that you should keep an eye on if you're going to try and cruise in the next, say, 60 to 90 days. A lot of these things will be still in effect, and I hope it makes your cruise a little bit easier. Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. We'll see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world. Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.